And so we settle in. You can feel your body beginning to grow heavy, in the most pleasant way. In our time together tonight, there is nothing to examine, nothing to understand, only the gentle rhythm of a story. A story of a world built on goldens and under deep blue river, a world of ancient Egypt. Allow my voice to be a soft companion as you begin to drift toward the quiet heart of this tale. Before we drift too far, if you feel a connection to this place of rest, you're welcome to leave a quiet like or subscribe. Think of it not as a task, but as leaving a soft footprint on a cool temple floor before you continue your journey inward. And if you wish, you can let me know in the comments what city or town you're listening from, and what time of night it is for you. There is something quite comforting in knowing we are all sharing this quiet moment together across the sleeping world. Alright, let the shadows in your room grow long and soft. Maybe you can hear the faint sound of your own breathing, and together, let's allow the story to begin. The sun is finally surrendering. You can feel it in the air, a slow release of the day's oppressive heat. The stone of the temple complex where you work as a junior scribe is no longer hot to the touch, but radiates a pleasant, stored warmth. Below in the city of Thebes, the first cooking fires are being lit, and the smell of roasting barley and baking bread drifts up to you, a comforting, timeless scent. Life here is governed by rhythms by the grand, predictable cycle of the sun god Ra making his journey across the sky, and the even grander, more vital rhythm of the Nile. The river is everything. It is the clock, the calendar, the provider. When it floods, the land is reborn in rich, black silt, and there is abundance. When the flood is low, there is worry. For now, the river is behaving, and life feels secure. This is the essence of Mot, the cosmic principle of order, truth, and balance. And for most of your young life, Mot has been strong. But lately, the air carries more than just the smell of bread. It carries whispers. You don't hear them in the marketplace, not yet. You hear them in the quiet halls where you spend your days, grinding ink and copying records onto fresh papers. You hear them in the clipped, low tones of the senior priests and the military officials who come and go with grim faces. They speak of the lands beyond the comforting embrace of the Nile Valley. The sand dwellers to the east growing bold. The sea raiders from the great green water to the north, their ships appearing like splinters on the horizon. And the restless bowmen of Nubia to the south, their power stirring in the sun-baked lands of Kush. These are the traditional enemies, the 9 bows, the forces of chaos that have always nibbled at the edges of Egypt's divine order. It's a quiet, creeping anxiety. Not a shout, but a murmur. You see a military courier arrive, his face caked in dust, handing a sealed clay tablet to a vizier aide, and the aide's shoulders slump just a little as he reads it. You see a lector priest, one of the men who can read the most sacred texts, staring at a map of the distant Levant, his finger tracing a path that you know is not a trade route. These are just fragments, tiny cracks in the perfect vase of Egyptian peace. For you, a scribe, your job is to record reality, not interpret it. You write down the grain yields, the tax records, the lists of offerings for the temple, yet you cannot help but feel the subtle shift in the tone of the world. The balance feels precarious. You look out from your high vantage point, over the sprawling city, at the thousands of lives unfolding in the gentle twilight. The ferryman poling his skiff across the water, the woman shooing goats into a pen, the children laughing as they chase a dog. And you wonder if they feel it too, if the baker, the pottery woman feel the same faint chill, or if their world is still perfectly warm and ordered. Historians, by the way, still debate this very point. They argue about how much the average Egyptian on the street knew or even cared about the grand strategies and distant enemies of the state, wondering whether this anxiety was a burden carried only by the literate, the powerful, the ones who read the reports, or if it trickled down, becoming a shared, unspoken disquiet that settled over the land like a fine layer of desert dust. As you pack away your reed pens for the night, you know only what you feel. A sense of unease. A feeling that the perfect, predictable rhythm of your world is being threatened by names you can barely pronounce in places you have never seen. You walk back to your modest quarters, the cool night air a welcome relief. But as you lie on your reed mat, The familiar sounds of the city settling for the night are joined by the echo of those whispers. The sea raiders, the sand dwellers, the forces of chaos, and you feel with a certainty that surprises you that the priest and the pharaoh will have to do something about it. Sleep has taken you, as it always does, into the silent, borderless country of dreams. You are on a small boat, not on the Grand Nile, but on a canal shimmering through a field of papyrus reeds. The stalks are impossibly tall, a soft grain for a strizing on either side. In your dream, you are not a scribe, but a fisherman. You cast a net woven from threads of moonlight, and it sinks into the water without a sound. Everything is peaceful. Everything is peaceful. Everything is ordered. The one that lives inside your heart. The gentle rocking of the boat, the rustle of the reeds, the cool water. A hand on your shoulder, firm but not rough. The dream boat dissolves instantly. The papyrus field vanishes, and you are back on your reed mat, in the deep, profound dark of your small room. For a moment, you are lost between worlds, your heart thumping with a confused rhythm. The hand is real. The wakened scribe, a low voice says. It's a voice you recognize but cannot immediately place. You blink, trying to draw the darkness into focus. A figure stands over you, a silhouette against the faint moonlight filtering through a high, narrow window slit. It's one of the temple guards, a man named Back. You usually only see him standing motionless at a doorway, his face a mask of professional boredom. To see him here, in your private space, is deeply unsettling. The head lector priest has need of you, he says, his voice a low rumble that feels too loud in the stillness. There is no explanation. No, I'm sorry to wake you. Just a command wrapped in a simple statement of fact. This is not a request. You understand this immediately. In the rigid hierarchy of the temple, a summons from a lector priest, net like a summons from the gods themselves. You don't ask questions. You don't ask questions. You swing your legs off the mat, the cool stone floor a shock to your warm, sleep-muddled body. You pull on your clean linen kilt, the one you save for temple duties, your fingers fumbling slightly in the dark. Back waits with unnerving patience, a silent, imposing shadow. You don't dare light a lamp. This is clearly meant to be a quiet of the temple complex. The world is transformed. The courtyards that buzz with activity during the day are now vast, empty stages of stone, bathed in the silver-blue light of a nearly full moon. The shadows are long and sharp, playing tricks on your eyes. A row of statues looks like a line of waiting giants. The gentle night breeze whispers through the columns, sounding like faint, indescribable conversations. It is both beautiful and deeply eerie. Which held the sun's heat just hours ago is now cold, almost damp, leaching the warmth from your souls. There is a particular kind of fear associated with the Egyptian might. It is the time when the barrier between the world of the living and the dead, the underworld, is at its thinnest. It's the time for restless spirits, for malevolent entities. Every shadow could hold a threat that has nothing to do with the living world. You find yourself walking a little closer to the solid, living presence of the guard Back. It is a strange and debated aspect of the Egyptian mind, this ability to hold deep, practical knowledge of architecture and administration alongside a profound and genuine fear of things that go bump in the night. Scholars still argue whether these beliefs were pervasive. Daily terror for people like you or more of a background radiation, a low-level hum of caution that you learned to live with. Tonight, as you hurry through the silent, moon-drenched temple, it feels very, very real. Back leads you away from the grand processional ways, away from the sanctuaries and chapels you know. He takes you down a narrow service corridor, then another, into a part of the sprawling complex you've only ever glimpsed from a distance. These are the workshops and storerooms, the functional, unadorned heart of the temple's operations. He stops before a heavy, plain wooden door, set in a windowless wall. It is utterly unremarkable, a door you would have passed 1,000 times without a second glance. He turns to you. In the faint light, you can see his face for the first time. It is impassive, but his eyes hold a flicker of something, perhaps a warning. He is waiting for you inside, Back says, and then, without another word, he turns and melts back into the shadows, his footsteps making no sound. You are left alone in the corridor, your heart beating a little faster now. The silence feels heavier. The door before you feels like a boundary. You have been summoned in secret, in the dead of night, to an unknown place for an unknown purpose. You were chosen, but you wonder for what purpose. Taking a slow, steadying breath, you place your hand on the rough wood of the door and push. The door opens inward with a soft groan, a sound that seems to complain about being disturbed. You step across the threshold, and the air changes immediately. It's cooler here, and carries a damp, earthy smell, completely different from the incense and dry stone of the main temple. The room is not a grand chamber or a sacred shrine. It's a simple, functional workshop, lit by a single, sputtering oil lamp that casts dancing, distorted shadows on the mud brick walls. Your eyes take a moment to adjust. In the center of the room stands the head lector priest, Amenhotep. He is an old man, but he stands with the ramrod straightness of someone you respect. His head is shaven, as is the custom for priests, and the lamplight gleams on his scalp. He is not wearing his ceremonial leopard skin vestments, but a simple, clean linen kilt, just like yours. He is here not as a performer of public ritual, but as a worker. He turns his head slowly as you enter, and his dark, intelligent eyes fix on you. They are eyes that have read countless sacred texts, eyes that understand the hidden architecture of the cosmos. You are the junior scribe, Sen-Nefer, he says. It is not a question. Your hand is steady. Your knowledge of the forms is good. I have seen your work. The simple praise from a man of his stature sends a strange warmth through you, a mixture of pride and a new, more potent anxiety. He back-oved you closer with a slight tilt of his head. On a low wooden table next to him are several objects, their purpose unclear. There's a small stone mortar and pestle, a few empty pottery jars, and a linen sack that seems to be bulging with something heavy. We have a task to perform, Amenhotep says, his voice quiet but resonant in the small space. A necessary task. A task for the preservation of Mot. He uses that word, Mot, order, and it strikes you with immense force. This isn't about personal gain or some obscure theological debate. This is about defending the very fabric of the world as you know it. The work begins not with papiers or a pen, he continues, but with the earth itself. He gestures to an empty woven basket by the door. You will go to the riverbank, not to the clean, fertile fields where the crops grow, but to the place where the outlanders moor their trading vessels. This is a strange instruction. The area he speaks of is a place most respectable Egyptians avoid. It's a muddy, chaotic stretch of shore downstream from the main city docks. It's where foreign sailors with their strange clothes and harsh languages come ashore, where the animals for transport are kept, a place of noise and refuse. It is, in a word, impure. It lies outside the clean, ordered sphere of Egyptian life. You will gather clay from that place, Amenhotep instructs. The mud from the very edge of the water where the foreigners have trod. Do not use a spade. Use your hands, fill the basket in to bring it back here. Go now, and speak to no one. You take the basket, its woven reeds rough against your skin. The order is bizarre, but you do not question it. You slip back out into the moonlit corridors, your mind racing. You wonder why he chose that specific place. The Kemet or Black Land is seen as blessed, the source of all life. It is the body of Osiris, the god of rebirth. To intentionally seek out clay from a place considered ritually unclean, a place tainted by the presence of foreigners, it feels like a deliberate violation of everything you've been taught. You make your way out of the temple complex through a small unguarded service gate. The night air of the city is different from the temple's rarefied atmosphere. It's thicker, carrying the smells of sleeping humanity, of animals in their pens, of stale water in ditches. You move through the silent streets, a ghost on a strange errand. As you get closer to the river, the ground becomes softer, the air damper. You soon arrive at the designated spot. It's even less appealing than you imagined. The moonlight reveals a shoreline littered with scraps of wood, frayed pieces of rope, the dark, ambiguous shapes of refuse. The air smells of mud algae and something vaguely sour. This is the fringe, the messy edge where Egypt meets the chaotic outside world. You take a deep breath and wade into the shallows. The water is cold, the mud thick and greedy. It tugs at your ankles. As instructed, you plunge your hands into the slick, wet earth. It's a deeply unpleasant sensation. It's not the clean, life-giving silt you've known your whole life. This mud is gritty, mixed with sand and pebbles and decaying bits of reed. It feels wrong. This is a fascinating bit of ritual logic, something modern scholars call sympathetic magic. The idea is that an object that has a connection to the target, in this case, mud from a place associated with foreigners, inherits some of the target's essence. By using this unsacred clay, you are shaping a piece of the enemy themselves. You scoop a handful of the cold, foul-smelling mud into your basket. It's heavy, messy work. Your hands and arms are coated in the stuff. You feel a profound sense of transgression, of doing something you shouldn't be doing. But the command of the head-lector priest echoes in your mind, overriding your disgust. This is for Mott. This is necessary. With the basket finally full, you hoist it onto your shoulder. The wet mud drips down your back, a cold and uncomfortable trail. You turn your back on the chaotic riverbank and begin the journey back to the hidden workshop, carrying the very earth of your enemies with you. You arrive back at the workshop, your breath coming in short, sharp bursts. The heavy basket has left a raw red mark on your shoulder, and a trail of muddy water marks your path through the silent temple corridors. As you step back into the lamplit room, the head-lector priest Amenhotep looks not at you but at the basket of dark, wet clay. He nods slowly, a look of grim satisfaction on his face. "Good," he says, the single word carrying the weight of approval. "Place it on the floor." The second element. He points to one of the empty pottery jars on the table, then gestures towards a leather water skin hanging from a peg on the wall. "That is not Nile water," he says, anticipating your assumption. "It was acquired." The slight pause before the word acquired is full of meaning. You look at the water skin. It's a foreign design, not the type used by Egyptian soldiers or merchants. It's cruder, made of a different kind of leather. The water within, Amenhotep explains, his voice dropping to an even more confidential tone, was taken from a well in the land of Ret-Jenu. Ret-Jenu, the Egyptian name for the lands of the Levant, the home of some of the very sin dwellers whose whispers of rebellion have been troubling the court. The implications are staggering. This wasn't casually obtained. This required a spy, a covert agent, someone who risked their life to journey deep into enemy territory, not for strategic information, but to fill a single water skin from a fallen well and bring it back. It is a level of meticulous, long-terming that baffles you. You wonder why they would go to such lengths. To control a thing, Amenhotep says as if reading your thoughts, you must have a part of it. The mud from their shore. The water from their wells. We are not making a mere statue, scribe. We are assembling a vessel for the enemy's soul. We will use their own earth and their own water to unmake them. He gestures for you to pour some of the precious, foreign water into the jar. You do so carefully, the water sloshing with a sound that seems alien in this Egyptian room. But you know it is not. It is potent. It is hostile. This is a principle that fascinates archaeologists. The idea of magical contagion, that properties can be transferred through contact. It's a surprisingly common thread in magical systems across the world, but the Egyptians institutionalized it. This wasn't some village wizard trying to curse an neighbor. This was an act of state, with the resources of the kingdom deployed to obtain the perfect magical ingredients. There is a strange, bureaucratic precision to it all. One can almost imagine a requisition form being filed, one water skin foreign, filled, for the purposes of state-sanctioned execration. Now, Amenhotep directs you to the work itself. Take a portion of the clay, he instructs, and slowly add the foreign water, not too much. We need a firm consistency, a consistency for shaping. You reach into the basket, and the cold, gritty mud once again coats your hands. You place a large lump of it on a flat stone slab on the floor. Then, with a small cup, you begin to add the water from Ret-Jenu, drop by drop. You begin to knead the clay, your fingers working the water into the mud. Primal process. The earthy smell of the clay mixes with the faint, mineral scent of the foreign water. Under the flickering lamplight, your hands, caked in mud, look ancient, like the hands of the first man shaping the first forms from the earth. You are no sculptor. Your skills are with the reed pen and the papyrus scroll. But Amenhotep guides you. Not so wet, he murmurs. More pressure here. Fold it. Work the air from it. He is patient, his instructions precise. He is teaching you a craft far older than writing. As you work, he tells you stories, or rather, he imparts knowledge in a low, rhythmic voice. He speaks of how the body is a vessel, and how a name is the key to the soul that lies within it. He explains that every person, from the mightiest pharaoh to the humblest farmer, has a shadow, a shut, and a life force, a core, and a personality, a BA. The ritual you are preparing for is not just about breaking a body, it is about attacking every single part of a person's existence, in this world and the next. Finally, the clay is ready. It is smooth, pliable, and holds its shape. It is a blank slate of potential, a canvas of foreign earth and water waiting for its grim purpose. You look at the lump of prepared clay, then at the head lector priest. His face is a mask of intense concentration. The preliminary steps are complete. The spiritual ingredients have been gathered and combined. The mundane work of gathering and mixing is over, and the truly magical part is about to begin. The air in the room feels thick with anticipation, as if the very atoms of the air are waiting to see what form the sun's sacred earth will take. Now, Amenhotep says, his voice a low hum that seems to make the very lamplight steady itself, you will give the chaos a face. He directs you to take a piece of the prepared clay, about the size of your fist. We will begin with the one they call Titien. The name is foreign, harsh on your Egyptian tongue. Amenhotep explains that he is a chieftain of a troublesome tribe on the eastern frontier, a man whose raids have grown bolder. You will not sculpt a masterpiece, the old priest continues, his eyes fixed on your hands. Artistry is for the tombs of kings. This is not about beauty. This is about essence. You need only capture the form of a man, a helpless man. You take the clay. It's cool and dense in your palm. You begin to work it, your fingers clumsy at first. You roll the main part into a thick torso, then pinch and pull the clay to form a head, 2 arms, 2 legs. The result is crude, almost childlike. It's a simple gingerbread man shape, barely recognizable as human. You feel a pang of foolishness as if you're a child playing in the mud. You look up at Amenhotep, expecting criticism. Good, he says. It is not a man. It is the idea of a man. Now, shape his arms. Not outstretched in strength, but bound behind his back. You turn the little figure over. With your thumb, you press the 2 soft clay arms together behind the torso, merging them into a single lump. The simple action is surprisingly powerful. The figure is instantly transformed. It is no longer just a crude shape, it is a captive, a prisoner. Its posture speaks of defeat, of helplessness. There is a cold logic to it that you are beginning to understand. You are not creating a portrait of the enemy, you are creating a model of his desired state, captured and powerless. Amenhotep has you create another, and then another. Each one is a different size, but they all share the same basic, crude form and the same bound arms. One represents a Nubian warlord from the south, another a rebellious mayor from a town in the delta. You are creating a small, silent army of the defeated. As you work, you realize the psychological genius of this. For the scribe, the soldier, the priest involved, the enemy is no longer a distant, fearsome warrior. He has been reduced to a lump of mud in your hand. You can squeeze him, shape him, control him. It's a way of asserting dominance before a single spear has been thrown. One of the oddest details that archaeologists have found on these surviving figurines is the lack of detail. They are almost never skillfully made. This has led to a fascinating debate about whether the crudeness was intentional. One school of thought, which Amenhotep's instruction seems to support, is that the simplicity was the point. It emphasized the enemy's lack of worth, their subhuman status. But another, more practical theory suggests that these rituals sometimes needed to be performed quickly, on a campaign or in response to a sudden threat. There was no time for an artist. Any soldier or scribe had to be able to slap together a functional effigy on short notice. The magic wasn't in the artistic quality, but in the symbolic representation and the words that would later be spoken over it. You create a small pile of these little clay captives. They lie on the stone slab, a pathetic collection of future ghosts. But the work is not done. Amenhotep then directs you to make something else. Not all enemies have a single face, he says. Sometimes, the enemy is a people, a city, an idea. He has you take a larger lump of clay and flatten it into a rough, rectangular tablet, like a small, thick piece of bread. Then he has you do the same for another. These are for the bigger targets, the abstract threats. The final form you must create is the most curious. He has you make several small, crude pots. Simple, unadorned vessels. You don't understand their purpose yet, but you shape them as instructed. When you are finished, you have a collection of objects on the workshop floor, a dozen bound human figures, several flat tablets, and a few small pots. All are made from the same impure clay, mixed with the same impure clay, mixed with the same fur and water. They are a uniform grey-brown in the flickering lamplight, the silent, menacing toolkit for a war that will be fought on a spiritual plane. You wipe your hands, but you can't get the feeling of the gritty, cold mud off your skin. It feels like you've been touching something forbidden, something that has stained you in a way water cannot wash clean. You look at your handiwork, and for the first time, you feel a flicker of fear, not for the enemy, but for the power you are helping to unleash. With the clay forms shaped and waiting, their bound limbs a testament to their intended fate, Amenhotep turns his attention to the table. An effigy is a body, he says, his voice low and instructive, but a power that clay can only contain. The words are the arrow, the clay is merely the bow. He gestures to the small, heavy stone mortar and pestle. The ink we use for this work is not the common black of scribes. Black ink is for records, for histories, for contract. It is the color of the fertile earth of life. For this we need its opposite. He opens a small wooden box, and inside are several lumps of a dark reddish-brown substance. It's hematite, a form of iron ore. He places a piece in the mortar. This is the stone of deserts, of dry places, he explains. The color of blood and of fire. It is the color of chaos. He then produces another ingredient, a small pouch containing a fine, pale powder. Gum arabic, he says, from the acacia tree. It will bind the color to the clay. Your task is to grind the hematite. You take the heavy stone pestle and begin to crush the ore in the mortar. It's hard work. The rhythmic thump scrape of stone on stone is the only sound in the room. Dust, a fine red powder, rises into the air. It smells of metal and dry earth. As you grind, Amenhotep speaks of the symbolism of colors. To the ancient Egyptians, colors were not just decorative, they were fundamental properties of the universe. Black and green were life. Blue was the divine, white was purity. But red was ambiguous. It was the color of the life-giving sun, but also the destructive fire of the desert. It was the color of blood spilled in battle, a sign of victory. It was the color of Set, the god of chaos, storms, and violence. By choosing red, you are deliberately invoking the most dangerous and unpredictable forces in the cosmos. You grind until the ore is a fine, consistent powder. Then, following Amenhotep's instructions, you add a small amount of the gum arabic powder and, using the foreign water from the jar, mix it into a thick, syrupy paste. The resulting ink is a deep, ominous red, the color of dry blood. It sits in the stone mortar, a small, malevolent pool of liquid power. You can't help but stare at it. Your usual black ink, made from simple soot and water, feels so benign, so normal. This reading feels alive. It feels angry. This use of specific colors for magical purposes is a well-documented part of Egyptian practice. But one peculiar detail often goes unmentioned. Sometimes, for certain magical or religious texts, scribes would use what is now called rubrication, writing key words or phrases in red to give them special emphasis. For example, the name of a dangerous god like Apep, the serpent of chaos, would often be written in red. This has created a long-standing puzzle for Egyptologists. How did they decide when read was being used for simple emphasis like a modern heading, and when it was meant to be magically potent? The context is everything, and in this hidden workshop, in the dead of night, there is no doubt about the context. This ink is a weapon. Amenhotep now lays out your writing tools, but they are not the fine reed pens you are used to. Instead, he produces a set of simple, sharpened wooden styluses. Papiers is for the words of men, he says. Clay requires a firmer hand. He hands you a stylus. You will write what I tell you to write, and you will not make a mistake. He takes one of the flat plate tablets you made earlier. This one is for the city of Avaris, he says, naming the foreign capital of the Hyksos, the sea raiders who have taken over parts of the northern delta. We do not curse one man but the whole nest. He begins to dictate, and you begin to write, pressing the sharp point of the stylus into the soft, damp clay. The letters are not the elegant, flowing script of hieratic you use for daily records. This is the full, formal hieroglyphic script, the sacred language of the gods, and the words Amenhotep dictates are chilling in their precision. It is not a rant or a scream of anger. It is a cold, legalistic litany of destruction. You press the stylus into the clay, the red ink filling the grooves you create. The contrast of the dark red on the grey-brown clay is stark and unsettling. The tip of the stylus feels like it's tracing not just a shape but a wound. You are not just writing on a tablet. You are carving a sentence of doom directly onto the essence of the enemy city. The ink seems to sizzle as it touches the clay, a trick of the light perhaps, but in this moment, you believe it. And it feels like chaos itself is bleeding from the tip of your stylus. The tip of your stylus hovers over the first clay figurine, the one meant to represent the eastern chieftain, Tetian. The little man of mud, with his arms bound helplessly behind him, seems to stare up at you with a blank, featureless face. Now Amenhotep says, his voice a low whisper, we give the vessel its inhabitant. To control the man, you must control his name. And not the name he calls himself in the marketplace. We need his Ren, his true name. This concept of the Ren, the true name, is a cornerstone of Egyptian thought. It wasn't just a label. It was a vital part of a person's soul, as real and as necessary as their heart or their shadow. To know someone's true name was to have a deep and profound power over them. It was believed that the gods had secret names, and knowing them was the key to magical power. Your own name, given to you at birth, was a sacred trust. This is why Amenhotep explains. The state invests so heavily in spies and informants. They are not just gathering intelligence about troop movements. They are collecting the true names of Egypt's enemies. Write his name on the chest, Amenhotep commands. He dictates the hieroglyphs for Tetian, and you carefully inscribe them onto the figurine's torso using the stylus and the thick red ink. The act feels intimate, a violation. It's like branding livestock, but infinitely more profound. You are marking this effigy, this lump of clay, with the very essence of a living man hundreds of miles away. But a name is not enough, the priest continues. A man is more than his name. He is his lineage. He then dictates the name of Tetian's father, and you write it below the son's name. Then, the name of Tetian's mother. You add her name to the growing inscription. We do not just curse the man, Amenhotep murmurs. We curse the tree from which he grew. We curse the root and the branch. The logic is chillingly thorough. To truly erase him, you must erase his context. This practice raises a fascinating and slightly disturbing question for historians. How did they get these names might be common knowledge. The name of his mother would be much harder to obtain. It implies a sophisticated intelligence network, one capable of penetrating the inner circles of foreign powers. Or, and this is a theory some scholars lean towards, did they sometimes just make them up? Is it possible that if the mother's true name was unknown, the priest would simply invent a plausible-sounding one? The academic world is divided. Some argue that for the magic to be effective, the name had to be absolutely correct. Others suggest that the intent was the most powerful component, as long as the priest and scribe believed they were writing the true name. the gods would understand the target. It's a debate about the very nature of their belief. Was it a science with rigid rules or an art form open to interpretation? As you finish inscribing the lineage, you feel a subtle shift in the object. It no longer feels like a simple clay doll. It feels heavier, more significant. It is Theban in a way that is both symbolic and, in this room, terrifyingly real. You have taken a man you have never met, a man sleeping in a tent in a distant desert, and you have captured his identity in a handful of mud and a few strokes of red ink. Amenhotep, as you repeat the process for the other figurines. You inscribe the name of the Nubian warlord and his parents. You write the name of the rebellious Delta mayor and his parents. Each time, the act is the same, but the weight of it grows. You are becoming proficient in this dark craft, your hands steady, your lines clean. You are no longer just a copyist of grain records. You are a registrar of the doomed. Finally, you turn to the flat tablets. For the city of Avar is, Amenhotep says, we name not the mother, but the pillars of its strength. He dictates a list. The name of their king, the names of his chief generals, the names of their high priests, even the names of their city's patron gods. You inscribe them all, one after the other, filling the surface of the clay tablet with a dense roster of reading hieroglyphs. You are not just cursing a place. You are systematically targeting its entire leadership and spiritual foundation. The tablet becomes a petition for the complete collapse of a society. It's not warfare. It's something else. It's decreation. Your hand aches, and your eyes sting from the smoke of the oil lamp. You have finished naming the individuals. The small bound figures, each bearing the red-inked identity of a specific enemy, lie in a silent, ominous row. Now Amenhotep pushes another, larger clay tablet towards you. This one is fresh, a blank slate of damp, grey potential. The pharaoh, may he live, prosper, and be in health, has enemies beyond a single chieftain or a rebellious mayor. The old priest says, his voice taking on a formal, almost legalistic tone. There are lands that stand against the divine order. The shepherd kings of the north, the wretched Kush of the south. We must name them all. We must leave no foe unlisted. He begins to dictate, and the scope of this ritual expands exponentially in your mind. This is no longer about neutralizing a few troublesome individuals. This is a magical assertion of geopolitical dominance. The first name he gives you is for the ruler of the Hyksos kingdom in the Nile Delta. You carefully inscribe his name and title, then the name of the king of Kush, far to the south, the great power on the upper Nile. You add him to the list. Then comes the prince of a powerful city-state in the Levant, a place you've only ever heard of in trade reports. One by one, you add the names of the great kings, the powerful rulers who surround Egypt, whose ambitions and armies pose a constant, existential threat to the peace of the two lands. You feel like you are drawing up a map of the known world, but a map defined by animosity. Each name represents a kingdom, an army, a treasury, a dynasty. These are the men who meet with their own generals, who plot their own campaigns. In their own palaces they are this in Thebes, but here, in this small, hidden room, their power is being reduced to a few reed scratches on a piece of wet clay. A supreme confidence in Egypt's magical and divine superiority. You are not praying for protection from these kings, you are actively marking them for destruction. This practice is one of the most direct windows we have into ancient Egyptian foreign policy. The lists of names found on broken Execration tablets and figurines read like a who's who of Egypt's rivals at a particular point in history. For historians, these are an absolute treasure trove. A king's name appearing on one of these lists can help date a particular archaeological layer or confirm relationships between different kingdoms. It's a bit like finding a top-secret enemy list from a forgotten empire. We learn not just who they fought, but who they worried about. As you continue writing, Amenhotep dictates a new category of enemy, one that surprises you. He has you at all the Asiatics of the Levant, all the Libyans of the West, and all the Nubians of Kush. You are no longer naming individuals, but entire ethnic groups. The curse is becoming wholesale, indiscriminate. It is directed not just at a king, but at his people, his lands. This is a sobering thought. The baker in a Nubian village, the olive farmer in a Canaanite town. People who have never seen an Egyptian soldier are now included in this all-encompassing magical attack. It transforms the ritual from a targeted strike into a form of magical carpet bombing. The list keeps growing. Any who shall speak of rebellion in the hearing of the Pharaoh. Any who shall plot evil against the crown of Upper and Lower Egypt. The targets are becoming more abstract. You are now cursing potential crimes, future acts of treason. It's a magical dragnet designed to catch not only the current enemies but anyone who might one day become an enemy. The paranoia of the state is being laid bare, written in reading. It's a fascinating and chilling insight into the mind of a government that saw threats lurking everywhere, not just on its borders, but in the very thoughts of its subjects and neighbors. And now, you are the instrument of that paranoia, the one giving it form and substance. The clay tablet is no longer a simple list, it is a weapon of immense scope, aimed at the entire world beyond Egypt's borders. The weight of all that hatred, all that fear, seems to soak into the clay, making it feel heavier with every name you add. You think the list is complete. The great kings are named, the foreign peoples cursed, the potential rebels marked. You are ready to put down your stylus, but Amenhotep is not finished. He pushes another, smaller clay tablet in front of you. His expression, which had been one of grand, geopolitical focus, now becomes something more intimate, more pointed. The enemies of Egypt are not always beyond our borders, he says, his voice a low, confidential murmur. The most dangerous serpent is the one that warms itself by your own hearth. He leans closer, and the names he dictates now are not foreign or strange. They are Egyptian. He gives you the name of a man you know by reputation, a nomarch, a governor of a province in the south, a man known to be wealthy, powerful, and fiercely independent. You inscribe his name, and are called not titans in your stomach. This is different. Cursing a distant, unknown chieftain is one thing. Cursing a fellow Egyptian, a man of high rank within the kingdom's administration, feels like a line has been crossed. It feels like treason, but you are the one holding the stylus. Then comes another name. An official in the treasury, a man who oversees the grain shipments. Amenhotep adds as a chilling aside, he thinks his ledgers are clever enough to hide his theft. You write the name, your hand moving stiffly. You are no longer participating in an act of foreign policy. You are participating in a political purge. This is about defending Egypt from the outside world. This is about the powers within Egypt settling scores, eliminating rivals, and crushing dissent before it can even begin. This is a side of the Execration ritual that is often overlooked. We tend to focus on the famous enemies, the Nubians, the Hyksos. But the discovery of Egyptian names on these tablets was a revelation for archaeologists. It proved that this magical weapon was turned inward just as often as it was turned outward. It was a tool for domestic control, a way for the central government to deal with corrupt officials, overly powerful nobles, or anyone suspected of disloyalty. You might feel secure in your walled town surrounded by your personal army. You would never suspect that in a small, dark room in Thebes, a scribe is writing your name in red ink, magically condemning you to oblivion. The list continues, a litany of internal threats. A military commander whose loyalty is in doubt. A priest from a rival temple cult. A woman at court rumored to be spreading malicious gossip about the royal family. Each name is a small shock. These are people who walk the same streets as you, who worship the same gods. And yet, they have been deemed enemies of the state, their identities now committed to this sinister clay tablet. The most chilling part is when Amenhotep dictates, and any Egyptian man or woman who may dream of rebellion. You pause, the tip of your stylus hovering over the clay. How can you curse a dream? The thought is staggering. The ritual is now targeting not just actions or even spoken words, but the most private, untouchable part of a person. This is the ultimate expression of totalitarian control. The desire to police not just the body but the subconscious. It is a point of considerable debate among scholars how literally this was meant, whether it was a genuine belief that the magic could enter a person's dreams and snuff out a rebellious thought, or if it was a kind of catch-all legalistic phrase meant to cover any possible form of future treason, however vague. We have no way of knowing for sure. We can only read the words and feel the chill of a government so anxious for control that it felt the need to declare war on the dreams of its own citizens. You finish writing. The tablet is filled with the names of your countrymen. It looks no different from the one listing the foreign kings, yet it feels infinitely more menacing. It is a tangible piece of the silent, vicious power struggles that unfold in the corridors of the palace and the temples. The whispers you used to hear in the hallways have now been given form, written in the blood-red ink of chaos. You have crossed a threshold. The world is no longer divided into the simple categories of Egyptian and foreigner, of order and chaos. You now understand that chaos can wear a familiar face, speak your own language, and pray to your own gods. And the response, it seems, is not justice in a courtroom, but annihilation in a secret magical ritual. The last name has been written. The clay tablets and figurines sit before you, a comprehensive catalogue of the pharaoh's enemies, both foreign and domestic. Your work as a scribe, the physical act of writing, is done. But the ritual, you now understand, has barely begun. The bodies are prepared, Amenhotep says, gesturing to the effigies. The names are bound to them. Now, we must pronounce the sentence. He picks up one of the tablets, the one listing the foreign kings, and holds it as if it were a legal document. A simple curse, may you die, is for angry children, he explains. The magic of the state must be precise. It must be grammatical. This is a strange choice of words, grammatical, but you soon understand what he means. He begins to dictate the formula of the curse itself, the words that will be spoken over these objects. He has you repeat them, forcing you to learn the structure. It's not a burst of rage. It is a meticulous, systematic dismantling of a person's entire existence expressed in a formal, repetitive, and chillingly organized way. You begin with the name he instructs. Say, as for this Tetian born of, and you name his parents. You establish the target. Then you declare the verdict: he shall be a rebel, he shall be overturned, he shall be undone. You repeat the phrases. The language is archaic, full of passive verbs that imply action being done to the victim by an unseen, inexorable force. Then the curse moves on methodically, piece by piece. May his fortress be overturned, Amenhotep recites. May his weapons be broken. It's like a litany, a checklist of destruction. You are not just wishing for the enemy's death, you are commanding the collapse of his entire infrastructure. The curse attacks his power, his followers, his ability to fight back. Each phrase is a magical hammer blow against a specific pillar of his strength. And then it becomes personal. May his body be broken, the priest continues, his voice a steady, low drone. May his shadow be erased. May his life force, his call, find no rest. May his soul, his be prevented from ascending to the sky. May his name, his Ren, be forgotten for all eternity. This is the part that truly terrifies you. This goes far beyond mere death. In Egyptian belief, death was not an end but a transition to the afterlife. A properly buried person, whose name was remembered and spoken, could live forever in the field of reeds. This curse is designed to prevent that. It is a sentence of true and total annihilation. To erase a person's shadow, to sever their soul from their body, and worst of all, to have their name be forgotten. This was to unexist them, to wipe them from the cosmic record as if they had never been born. This grammar of doom is one of the most fascinating aspects of these rituals. The formulas are remarkably consistent across different time periods and locations where these artifacts have been found. This suggests a highly standardized, state-approved curriculum for this kind of magic. Later priests like Amenhotep didn't just improvise. They learned these devastating legalisms from sacred, secret books. Some Egyptologists have argued that the language is deliberately modeled on royal decrees or legal judgments. The curse is framed not as a wish, but as a final, binding verdict delivered by a cosmic court, with the priest acting as the chief magistrate. The list of afflictions continues, becoming almost absurdly specific. May his wife be taken from him. May his bread turn to dust in his mouth. May his beer turn to bitter water. May his magic be turned against him. The curse even seeks to attack the enemy's own magical defenses, a concept that implies a grudging respect for the powers of foreign sorcerers. It's a comprehensive, 360-degree attack on a person's life, death, afterlife, family, property, and power. Nothing is left to chance. You recite the words until they become a grim rhythm in your mind. You understand now. The clay figures are the body. The red ink is the wound. The name is the link. But these words, this terrifying, grammatical formula, this is the killing blow. It is a legal document served upon the soul, a divine restraining order against existence itself. The thoroughness is what makes it so unnerving. It is the product of a bureaucratic mind, a mind that makes lists and organizes details, but applied to the purpose of total, metaphysical destruction. You are no longer just a scribe, you are learning to be an executioner of the soul. With the grammar of the curse seared into your memory, Amenhotep moves to the next step, a physical act to reinforce the magical words. He points to the small, bound figure of Tetian, the desert chieftain. Words are spirit, he says, but the world is flesh and bone, rope and stone. The spirit must see its will reflected in the physical. The gods appreciate a clear demonstration. He hands you a thin, rough cord made of palm fiber. Bind him, he instructs. Bind him as you would a true captive. You take the cord, your fingers feeling its coarse texture. You wrap it around the small clay arms, which are already pressed together behind the figure's back. You pull the cord tight, the fiber digging slightly into the soft clay, leaving a clear impression. You loop it again, then tie a secure knot. The simple act is deeply symbolic. You are performing one. In the strange, potent reality of this room, you have just bound a man who is sleeping, perhaps, miles away in his own tent. Bind his legs, Amenhotep commands. You obey, wrapping another piece of cord around the figure's crude ankles. Now the effigy is not just a captive, but a hobbled one, unable to flee. The helplessness of the little clay man is complete. He is a perfect symbol of total defeat. This act of binding is a recurring theme in Egyptian magic and symbolism. Pharaoh is often depicted holding a group of enemies by the hair, their bodies limp and defeated. Prisoners of war are always shown with their arms bound in elaborate, excruciating-looking knots. This wasn't just practical, it was deeply symbolic. To be bound was to lose your agency, your freedom of movement, your very ability to act in the world. It was a state of living death. You are magically imposing this state upon the real person. There is a fascinating and somewhat contentious theory among some Egyptologists about the specific knots used in these rituals. A few surviving Execration figures appear to be bound with very particular and complex knots. This has led to the hypothesis that there may have been a magical knot theory where different types of knots had different powers or were effective against different types of enemies. Was there a special knot for a Nubian, a different one for a Libyan? Was a reef knot more effective for a curse of illness, while a clove hitch was better for a curse of political failure? The evidence is incredibly thin, bordering on non-existent, and most mainstream scholars dismiss it as fanciful speculation. But it remains a tantalizing idea, a secret, coded language of knots, another layer of this dark, intricate science. For now, the simple, tight knot you've tied feels powerful enough. Amenhotep then directs you to do something even stranger. He gives you a larger piece of clay and tells you to flatten it. Then, he has you press the bound figurine face down into this fresh clay, so it leaves a deep, clear impression, a negative image of the captive. His prison, the priest says simply. You now have the effigy itself, and a claim hold of the effigy. He has you do this for several of the other figures. The purpose isn't immediately clear, but the symbolism feels potent. You have created the man, and you have also created his tomb or his cell. You repeat the binding process for each of the individual figurines. The Nubian warlord, the corrupt official, the rebellious mayor. Each one is methodically, carefully bound at the wrists and ankles. The pile of cordage shrinks as the row of captives becomes a collection of trussed, helpless, repetitive, Bind, tighten, knot. Bind, tighten, knot. With each knot you tie, the reality of what you are doing settles deeper into your bone. This isn't just a religious ceremony. It feels like a military operation, a police action, a quiet, methodical neutralization of threats, all conducted with clay and string in a hidden back room. You look at your work. The small, grey figures, now intricately bound with the rough cord, look even more pathetic and defeated. The red-inked names on their chests are stark against the dull clay. They are no longer just symbols. They are dossiers, charge sheets, and verdicts all rolled into one. You have shaped them, named them, and now you have bound them. You have stripped them of their power, their freedom, and their identity, all without leaving this small, stuffy room, charged with the focused intent of your actions. The physical preparations are almost complete. The real performance is about to begin. The final captive is bound. The tablets are inscribed. The room is silent. Save for the sputtering of the lamp, you feel a sense of completion. But Amenhotep's face tells you that a crucial element is still missing. These acts are not performed in a vacuum, he says, his voice taking on a new resonance, a tone of reverence and fear. We do not wield this power alone. An accusation requires an executioner. We must call upon those who dwell in the places of judgment, those whose nature is to unmake. He turns to face a blank section of the mud brick wall, as if it were a grand altar. He begins to chant, and the nature of the ritual shifts entirely. Until now, it has felt like a craft, a secret military art. Now it becomes religion. But this is not the comfortable, life-affirming religion of the public temples. He is not calling on Ra, the sun god, or Osiris, the king of the afterlife. He is calling on the terrifying, destructive forces of the cosmos. Hear me, Sekhmet, lioness of the southern sky, he intones, his voice a low growl. Sekhmet, the eye of Ra, the goddess of plague, war, and vengeance. A goddess so fearsome that, in the myths, she once nearly destroyed all of humanity in a bloodthirsty rage, and had to be tricked into getting drunk to stop her. To invoke her name is to invite a wild, uncontrollable power into the room. You feel a prickle of genuine fear on your arms. This is not a goddess you pray to for a good harvest. This is a goddess you unleash upon your enemies. Hear me, Repwa Wet, the opener of the ways, he continues. Repwa Wet, the jackal-headed god of war, a scout who opens the way for the army. But he also opens the way for the dead, leading them into the underworld. His presence is ambiguous, a guide for both soldiers and souls. By calling his name, Amenhotep is requesting a path to be cleared, a path for the curse to travel from this room to its distant target. Then he calls upon names you have only heard in whispers, names from the deepest, darkest corners of Egyptian theology. Hear me? Emhe, the devourer of millions, he cries, and a chill runs down your spine. Emhe, a terrifying god of the underworld who lived in a lake of fire and could only be controlled by the sun god himself. And hear me, Shizimu, the slaughterer of souls. Shizimu, a grim, paradoxical demon god. He was the lord of perfumes and oil. But he was also a brutal executioner in the underworld who would press the heads of the damned in his windpress, squeezing their wickedness out like juice. This is a part of Egyptian religion that is rarely seen on the grand temple walls. It's the dark underbelly, the pantheon of nightmares. These are the beings who embody the destructive, chaotic aspects of the universe, the ones who enforce the ultimate penalties. Mainstream scholarship often focuses on the orderly, cyclical nature of Egyptian belief, but they had a very real and very vivid conception of hellish forces. The debate among historians is whether these gods were seen as purely evil, or as necessary evils, the grim janitors of the cosmos, performing the dirty work that maintained the divine order, Mot. Amenhotep's invocation suggests the latter. He is not worshipping them, he is summoning them as divine witnesses and celestial enforcers. He is deputizing the demons of the underworld to carry out the will of the Egyptian state. As Amenhotep chants, the atmosphere in the room becomes thick and heavy. The air feels charged, electric. The flickering lamplight seems to dim, the shadows in the corners deepening into pools of absolute black. It is almost certainly a trick of your tired mind, your heightened senses, but you could swear you feel a presence in the room with you. or presences, you feel a weight of ancient, implacable power, a sense of being observed by eyes that have witnessed the birth of stars and the death of souls. You, a junior scribe who just yesterday was worried about spilling ink on a tax roll, are now standing in a room supposedly filled with some of the most fearsome beings in existence. You keep your head bowed, your eyes fixed on the clay figures on the floor. You do not dare to look up. You are a humble servant here, a tool. The powers being invoked are far, far beyond your station. And to hope that the terrible forces being summoned do not decide to turn their attention from the clay effigies to the living, breathing humans in the room. The ritual has now escalated from a secret operation to a divine tribunal, and you are merely a clerk in the court. The last of the terrible names fades into the charged silence of the room. The air still feels thick with unseen presences, but Amenhotep's posture changes. The fervor of the invoker recedes, replaced by a cold, almost detached professionalism. He turns to you, his eyes clear and focused. "What we do here," he says, his voice now calm and measured, "is not born of anger. Anger is a fire that consumes the self. This is not for personal vengeance or for the settling of a private grudge. This is a duty. It is a necessary procedure for the health of the two lands." His words reframe everything. You had felt the chilling thrill of power, the fear of the divine, the grim satisfaction of cursing an enemy. But Amenhotep is sweeping all of that away. He is telling you that emotion has no place here. This is not about how you feel about the Nubian warlord or the corrupt official. This is about their objective status as a threat to Mot, the cosmic order. The ritual is not an act of hate, it is an act of state. He picks up the bound figurine of the rebellious governor. He looks at it not with fury, but with the dispassionate air of a physician examining a tumor. "This man," he says, holding the clay figure, "is a sickness in the body of Egypt. He consumes resources that are not his. He spreads whispers of dissent. He weakens the authority of the divine pharaoh. Left unchecked, the sickness will spread. We do not hate the sickness. We remove it." This is a stunningly modern concept, the idea of the state as a living organism that needs to be protected from disease. It transforms the act of magical cursing from a dark art into a kind of spiritual surgery. You are not a sorcerer, you are a surgeon's assistant. You are not motivated by passion. You are motivated by a clinical necessity to preserve the whole. This bureaucratic, impersonal approach to magic is one of the most uniquely Egyptian things you have ever encountered. A curse might be a wild, emotional scream. Here, it is an administrative action. This procedural view of magic is a topic of great interest for historians. It helps explain the meticulous record-keeping, the standardized formulas, the sheer bureaucratic thoroughness of the whole affair. It wasn't an emotional outburst. It was a repeatable, teachable, scalable process. Some scholars argue this is the key to understanding the longevity and stability of the Egyptian state. They didn't just have an army and a tax system, they had a fully integrated system of magical administration, a set of tools for dealing with problems that couldn't be solved with a spear or ledger. Amenhotep places the figurine back on the floor. "Your feelings are irrelevant," he says, his gaze locking onto yours. "Your fear is irrelevant. Your pity, should you feel any, is a weakness you must discard. You are a scribe of the Purank, the house of life. And our purpose is to preserve life. Sometimes, to preserve the great life of the kingdom, smaller, corrupted life of the kingdom, smaller, corrupted lies." His words are like a bucket of cold water. They wash away your fear and replace it with a strange, grim clarity. You are an instrument, a tool in the hands of the state, wielded for the preservation of the world. The morality of it is beyond your station. Your job is to perform your function correctly, just as you would when copying a grain inventory. The numbers in the inventory must be correct. The strokes of the hieroglyphs in the curse must be correct. You look down at the rows of clay figures and tablets. They no longer look like little dolls or lists of names. They look like paperwork. They are requisitions for ruin, invoices for oblivion. The entire process, from gathering the impure clay to invoking the terrifying gods, now seems less like a terrifying magical rite and more like necessary, if unpleasant, bureaucratic task like cleaning the sewers or collecting taxes from a plague-ridden town. It is a job that must be done for the good of the public. This realization calms you. The weight of personal responsibility lifts from your shoulders. You are not the one passing sentence. The pharaoh, the state, not itself, they have passed the sentence. You are merely the clerk, filling out the forms. It is a chilling thought, but in this moment, it is also a comforting one. It allows you to proceed with the final, terrible steps of the ritual, not with fear or hatred, but with the cold, efficient focus of a dedicated civil servant. The time has come, Amenhotep announces, his voice echoing slightly in the small, still room. The preparations are complete. The witnesses have been summoned. The verdict has been read. The verdict has been read. Now we proceed to the place of judgment. He extinguishes the single oil lamp with a small clay snuffer. Disorienting darkness. For a heartbeat, you are lost. Your eyes searching for a light that isn't there. Then, Amenhotep strikes a flint. They spark leaps, and he lights a new lamp, a small, simple pottery dish with a single floating wick. This is the only light we will need, he says. Follow me, and do not drop anything. He carefully gathers the clay tablets, stacking them with a soft, wet sound. He places them in your arms. They are surprisingly heavy, dense with the weight of their malevolent purpose. He then picks up the linen cloth upon which the small, bound figurines are laid, gathering the corners to make a makeshift sack. He leads the way out of the workshop, back into the silent corridors of the temple. But he does not lead you up, towards the moonlit courtyards. He leads you down. You follow the bubbling pool of lamplight down a flight of narrow, steep stone steps you have never seen before. The air grows colder, damper. It smells of dust, of stone, of deep, undisturbed earth. The walls are no longer plastered mud brick but rough-hewn rock, the living bedrock upon which the temple is built. The steps are worn in the center, a sign of countless secret journeys made over centuries. Your footsteps and the soft shuffle of Amenhotep's are the only sounds. This descent feels significant, symbolic. You are leaving the world of the living, the world of light and air, and entering a place that feels like a prelude to the underworld. You are going deeper into the foundations of the temple, into its secret heart. Many large Egyptian temple complexes have crypts and hidden chambers, but their exact purposes are often a subject of intense scholarly debate. Some work merely for storing valuable ritual objects. Others seem to have been architectural necessities, but some, like the one you feel you are approaching, seem to have had a specific, ritual function that was meant to be kept secret from all but the highest-ranking priests. Their existence suggests a whole level of religious practice that was intentionally hidden from public view. The stairway ends. You are in a short, low silencing tunnel. Ahead, you see a doorway, but it is blocked. A single, massive slab of cut stone stands in the way. There is no handle, no visible mechanism. Amenhotep hands you the lamp. He places his hands flat against the stone slab and begins to chant in a low. It is not the formal Egyptian of the curse. It is not the formal Egyptian of the curse. It is not the formal Egyptian of the curse. It is something older and stranger. As he chants, grinding groan that seems to shake the very rock around you, the stone slab begins to slide sideways, revealing a dark opening beyond. You stare amazed. The mechanism is a perfect example of the hidden genius of Egyptian engineering. A precisely counterweighted system most likely, but one so well concealed it appears to be magic. Amenhotep gestures for you to enter first. You hold the lamp high and step across the threshold. The room is a perfect cube, not large, perhaps only 10 feet on each side. The walls, floor, and ceiling are made of undecorated, roughly finished stone blocks. There are no carvings, no paintings, no inscriptions of any kind. This is not a place of beauty or worship. It is a functional space, a sterile, empty chamber designed for one purpose and one purpose and one purpose only. The air is dead, still, and incredibly cold. The silence is absolute, a pressure against your eardrum. In the exact center of the floor is a single, flat-topped stone block, like a butcher's table or a crude, low altar. That is the only feature in the entire room. This is it. The place of judgment. The sterile, hidden environment is a key part of the ritual's power. It is a blank space, a void separated from the ordered, decorated world above. In this room, the normal rules of the cosmos do not apply. It is a pocket of controlled chaos, a place where acts of uncreation can be safely performed without contaminating the sacred temple above. You place the heavy clay tablets on the stone block. Amenhotep follows you in, laying out the bound figurines beside them. He then slides the great stone door shut. The grinding sound is final. You are sealed in. It is just you, the priest, and the condemned, in a silent, stone box deep beneath the earth. The heavy stone door grinds shut, and the sound echoes once in the small, stone cube before being swallowed by an absolute silence. The world is gone. There is no moonlight, no breeze, no distant city sounds. There is only the small, flickering flame of the single lamp you, Amenhotep, and the pathetic clay army laid out on the central stone block. The air is so still you can hear the faint hiss of the wick consuming the oil. Amenhotep stands before the block, his back to you. He raises his hands slowly, palms outward, as if to show the unseen forces in the room that he holds no weapon. He begins to chant again, but this time it is not an invocation. It is a declaration. He is addressing the divine witnesses he summoned earlier, presenting the case. His voice is different now. It is not the whisper or the growl of a sorcerer. It is the clear, resonant, and dispassionate voice of a court official reading a verdict. He begins with the first figurine, the one representing Theban. Before you, the great ones, the slaughterers, the judges of the duet, he proclaims, his voice filling the small chamber. We present this enemy of the divine order. This Theban, son of. He recites the names of the chieftain's parents, formally identifying the target. Then he begins the litany of the curse you were forced to memorize, the grammar of duel. May his plans be dust. May his words be confusion. May his arms be weak, Amenhotep drones. His voice is a low, monotonous hum, a hypnotic, rhythmic wave of sound that seems to press in on you from all sides. It's not loud, but it is pervasive. The repetitive, formulaic nature of the curse, which seemed merely bureaucratic upstairs in the workshop, takes on a terrifying power down here in this sterile, silent box. Powerful machine of destruction being brought to life word by word. You watch, mesmerized. The priest is no longer just a man. He is a conduit, a channel for the focused will of the state and the destructive power of the gods he has invoked. The lamplight casts his shadow, large and distorted, on the stone wall behind him. The shadow sways and dances as he chants, a silent, dark giant mimicking his every move. This use of sound is a critical and often underappreciated element of ritual. Modern science understands how certain frequencies and rhythmic sounds can affect the human brain, inducing trance-like states or heightened emotional responses. The ancient priests, though they wouldn't have understood the neuroscience, were masters of the practical application. The low, droning chant, echoing in a small enclosed stone space, was likely designed to alter the consciousness of the participants, to focus their minds and heighten their sense of connection to the magical act. Some scholars have even speculated, based on the dimensions of certain chambers, that they may have been built to resonate at specific frequencies, turning the room itself into a musical instrument designed to amplify the power of the spoken word. It's a controversial idea, but standing here in this humming, vibrating cube of stone, it feels plausible. Amenhotep moves from one effigy to the next, repeating the full curse for each one. The Nubian warlord, the corrupt official, the rebellious mayor. Each one receives the same meticulous verbal dismantling. It's a slow, methodical process. There is no rush, no excitement. It is a grim, patient work. As he chants, the air seems to grow colder. The flame of the lamp seems to burn lower, as if the very energy in the room is being consumed by the spell. He then turns to the large tablets, the ones listing the foreign kings and peoples. He reads the names aloud, one by one, and then applies the curse to them collectively. As for these kings, as for these peoples, may their reigns be shortened, may their lands be barren, may their alliances crumble. The scope of his pronouncement is immense. He is passing judgment on half the known world from a small, hidden basement. The sheer volume of negative energy being focused in this room is staggering. It is a torrent of ill will, a concentrated beam of malice, all given structure and power by the ancient, legalistic words of the curse. You stand motionless behind the priest, a silent witness. Your role is now simply to be present, to add your life force, your focus to the operation. You are part of the battery that is powering this terrible machine, and you feel your own sense of self begin to dissolve, replaced by the grim, singular purpose of the ritual. The final word of the long, droning curse hangs in the air and then dissolves into the profound silence. The verbal assault is complete. Now the ritual moves from the symbolic to the visceral, from words to actions. Amenhotep, his face slick with a thin sheen of sweat in the lamplight, turns to face the stone block. He has finished prosecuting the case. Now he will carry out the sentence. He leans forward over the small, bound figure of Tetienne. His expression is one of utter contempt. And then he spits. A thick glob of saliva lands squarely on the chest of the clay figurine, smearing the red-inked name. The sound is shockingly loud in the silence, a wet, ugly noise of pure disrespect. It is a crude, vulgar act, so at odds with the high-minded, theological language he was just using. But you understand its purpose instantly. It is the ultimate act of defilement. In a society obsessed with purity and cleanliness, spitting on something was a profound insult. It was a way of designating something as refuse, as filth, as less than human. By spitting on the effigy, Amenhotep is not just insulting the enemy, he is magically contaminating him, lowering his status, making him ritually unclean and therefore weak and vulnerable. It is a raw, primal act of humiliation, designed to strip the enemy of his dignity and honor. He gestures for you to do the same. You hesitate. Your entire upbringing has been about cleanliness, about maintaining ritual purity. To deliberately spit feels like a violation of your own being. But the priest's eyes are on you, hard and demanding. This is not a request. You take a breath, summon saliva in your dry mouth, and lean forward. You spit on the next figure in the line, the Nubian warlord. Your spittle lands on its small clay leg. The act leaves a foul taste in your mouth and a sense of self-disgust in your heart. But you have obeyed. You have participated in the defilement. This element of ritualized disrespect is a key feature of the execration process, though one that is often glossed over in polite academic texts. But the archaeological evidence is clear. Surviving figurines have been found that were not just broken, but also show signs of being trampled, urinated upon, and even burned. The goal was to subject the effigy to every possible indignity, in the belief that this humiliation would be magically transferred to the real person. It's a fascinating, if disturbing, insight into the psychology of magical warfare. It wasn't enough to kill the enemy, you had to utterly debase them first. One of the more peculiar and debated forms of this defilement involves fire. Some texts scribe roasting the figures, but not to destroy them. It was a form of magical torture, a slow cooking meant to inflict suffering. Archaeologists have found figurines that are scorched and blackened, but still intact, suggesting they were held over a fire rather than thrown into it. It's a grisly detail that reveals the cold, calculated cruelty that lay at the heart of this administrative procedure. Amenhotep continues down the line of figurines, spitting on each one with methodical disdain. When he is finished, he takes a small bowl, one of the simple clay pots you made earlier, and relieves himself into it. He then sprinkles a few drops of the urine onto each of the tablets, contaminating the lists of names, defiling entire peoples with a single, contemptuous act. The sharp, acrid smell fills the small, stuffy chamber, a stark contrast to the clean, earthy scent of the clay. The room, which had felt like a sacred court of judgment, now feels like a profane, dirty space. It has been deliberately polluted. The act of desecration is a necessary part of the magic. You must drag the enemy down into the filth, pull them off their throne and into the mud, before you can finally destroy them. The atmosphere in the room has shifted from one of awesome, terrible power to one of presence of gods. You are no longer in the presence of gods, and the floor is getting messy. The ritual defilement is complete. The clay figures and tablets lie on the stone block, stained and desecrated, their magical purity shattered. The air in the stone cube is thick with the smells of sweat, urine, undulled, cold stone. In the wavering lamplight, the metal gleams with a dull, menacing light. It is at least 6 inches long, sharpened to a fine, cruel point. It is not a sewing needle or a tool for a craftsman. It is an instrument made for one purpose, piercing. A man's life resides in his heart. Amenhotep says, his thoughts reside in his head. His thoughts reside in his head. To stop him. He picks up the first figurine, the bound and default effigy of Tetian. He holds it firmly in one hand. With the other, he aims the bronze needle at the figure's chest, right where the heart would be. He hesitates for a moment, his eyes closed, his lips moving in a silent, final curse. Then, with a quick, decisive thrust, he drives the needle deep into the clay. The soft, unbaked clay offers almost no resistance. The needle sinks in up to the hilt, a motion that is both silent and horrifically violent. He has pierced the chieftain's heart. He holds the impaled figure up for a moment, the bronze needle protruding from its back. He then twists the needle, a vicious, grinding motion that would be an act of unspeakable cruelty if performed on a living being. He is not just killing the effigy, he is torturing it. He is ensuring the destruction of the magical heart. Then he withdraws the needle with a soft sucking sound and aims it at the figure's head. He repeats the process, driving the sharp bronze point directly into the center of the crude, featureless skull. He has now magically destroyed the enemy's ability to think, to plan, to lead. This act of piercing is one of the most visually arresting parts of the ritual, and pierced figurines are some of the most dramatic artifacts of this type ever found by archaeologists. Sometimes they are found with the bronze or flint needle still stuck in them, a chilling tableau frozen for millennia. An even more obscure and debated practice involves the use of different materials for the needles. While bronze was common, some texts seem to suggest that needles made from the bone of a certain animal, or wood from a particular tree, could be used for more specific curses. Was a needle of acacia wood used to inflict a wasting sickness, while a needle of bone was used to cause madness? The evidence is highly speculative, and most scholars believe the material was less important than the act of piercing itself. But it hints at an even deeper, more complex layer to this dark science. Amenhotep hands the bronze needle to you. Its weight is surprising, the metal cool and smooth against your skin. You will do the next one, he commands. His voice is flat, without emotion. You pick up the effigy of the Nubian warlord. It feels heavy in your hand, no longer a simple clay doll but a vessel of a man's life. You can see the spittle glistening on its chest in the lamplight. You try to adopt the same clinical detachment as the priest. This is a procedure. You aim for the chest. Your hand trembles slightly. You push. The needle slides into the clay with a soft, yielding whisper. You feel a strange, sickening vibration travel up your arm, as if you have just pierced something vital. You withdraw the needle and pierce the head, just as you were shown. You have done it. You have done it. You have nausea washes over you, but you swallow it down. You are no longer an observer. You are a full participant and executioner. You continue down the line, methodically piercing the heart and head of each figurine. The corrupt official, the rebellious mayor, each one receives the same cold, precise treatment. The act becomes easier with repetition, the horror numbing into a grim routine. Pierce the heart. Pierce the head. You are becoming good at this. The thought is more terrifying than the act itself. The last figurine has been pierced. Each one lies on the stone block, mortally wounded in its clay heart and head. The bronze needle, now slick with wet clay, lies beside them. The air in the chamber is thick with a sense of finality, but there is one last, brutal step. The ultimate act of destruction. Amenhotep looks at you, then at the collection of violated effigies. A body, however broken, can be mended, he says, his voice barely a whisper. A name, however defiled, can be cleaned. To ensure annihilation, we must not just kill. We must jar into dust. We must leave nothing to be found, nothing to be reassembled. Not by man, not by God. He then reaches beneath the stone block and produces a simple, heavy object. It is a stone, a piece of granite about the size of a loaf of bread, worn smooth on one side from some previous unknown use. It is a primitive tool, a hammer, a smasher. It is a weapon of pure, blunt force. He places the first figurine, the twice-pierced body of Tetienne, in a clear space on the altar. He doesn't say a prayer or an incantation. The time for words is over. He simply raises the heavy stone high over his head, his muscles tensing in the dim light. For a moment he holds it there, a figure of absolute, impending destruction. Then, with a grunt of exertion, he brings it down. Crock. The sound is sharp and shockingly loud in the confined space. It's not a dull thud, but a crisp, violent snap. The clay figurine, which was soft and pliable just a short time ago, has been resting in the cold, dry air of the chamber. Its surface has hardened just enough to be brittle. It doesn't squash. It shatters, the head, the torso, the bound limbs. They explode into a dozen or more jagged pieces that skitter across the surface of the stone block. Is now just a collection of meaningless red fragments on shards of grey clay. The form of the man is gone, obliterated in an instant. He has not just killed the enemy, he has uncreated him. The casual, methodical violence of the act is what stuns you. There is no anger in it, no fury. It is a quiet, deliberate, and final smash. It is the same motion a quarryman might use to break rock, or a cook to crack a large nut. It is work. It is procedure. He gestures to you. It is your turn. You look at the heavy granite stone, then at the next figurine in line, the one representing the Nubian warlord. Your hands feel weak, your arms heavy. But you obey. You pick up the stone. It is colder and heavier than you expected. You place the pierced, defilled figurine in the center of the block. You lift the stone. It feels like an act of immense, irreversible gravity. You think of the man this clay represents. Is he sleeping? Is he laughing with his family? A fleeting sense of doom? Or is this just a grim pantomime in a dark room? A story told to frighten his shadow? You bring the stone down. The crack of the impact reverberates through your arm, a shockwave of destruction. The figurine disintegrates just as the first one did. You have done it. You have shattered a man's effigy, his name, his very being in this magical space. This is the climax of the ritual, the moment most commonly depicted in the few surviving textual descriptions. The smashing. It is the physical manifestation of the curse's intent. He shall be overturned, he shall be overturned. He shall be undone. Interestingly, the tools used were almost always simple and primitive. A stone, a brick, even the heel of a sandal. There's a debate among historians as to why this was. Some argue it was purely practical. These were tools that were always available, even on a military campaign. Others propose a more symbolic reason. By using a simple common tool, you are emphasizing the enemy's lowliness. He is not worthy of being destroyed by a noble sword or a ceremonial mace. He is to be smashed like a piece of garbage, with a common rock. You and Amenhotep take turns, a silent, rhythmic partnership of destruction. Crack. The rebellious may crack. One by one, the enemies of the state are reduced to fragments. Then you move on to the tablets. You smash the list of foreign kings. You smash the list of Egyptian writers. The hieroglyphs that took you so long to carefully inscribe are now just meaningless patterns on broken pottery. The work is grim, but there is a strange, hypnotic rhythm to it. Lift, aim, smash. You are a machine of annihilation, and the stone block is your anvil. The final, sharp crack echoes in the chamber and fades into silence. The stone block is no longer an altar holding a row of captives. It is a disaster site. A chaotic jumble of grey jagged shards, some large, some as small as your fingernail. The red ink of the names and curses is visible on some of the fragments, a broken, unreadable script of pure malice. The neat, orderly rows of enemies have been transformed into a pile of anonymous rubble. The sentence is carried out, Amenhotep says, his voice quiet but filled with a grim satisfaction. He places the heavy smashing stone on the floor. But the work is not yet finished. The malevolent spirit, the core of the enemy, has been shattered. But its essence lingers in these pieces. They are still potent. They must be contained. He hands you a small, stiff brush made of palm fibers and a flat piece of wood to use as a dustpan. Your next task is not grand or violent. It is humble, meticulous, almost domestic. You are to clean up. You begin to sweep the surface of the stone block. The sharp, gritty sound of the shards scraping against the stone is the only noise. You have to be careful. The edges of the broken pieces are sharp, and you can easily cut your fingers. It's a strange juxtaposition. One moment you are a metaphysical executioner, shattering the souls of kings. The next, you are a janitor, sweeping up the mess. But you understand the logic. To leave even a single piece behind would be a catastrophic failure. A fragment containing a single hieroglyph of the enemy's name could, in theory, be found by a rival magician and used to reverse the curse, or worse, to draw power from it. The annihilation must be absolute, which means the disposal must be absolute, which means the disposal must be perfect. This attention to detail, this almost obsessive-compulsive need to collect every last fragment, is something archaeologists have noted at the sites where Execration deposits have been found. The shattered pieces are almost always found in a tightly contained area, suggesting they were carefully gathered and deposited, not just smashed and abandoned. It speaks to a deep-seated belief that these broken bits were still magically dangerous, like radioactive waste that needed to be handled with extreme care. As you sweep, you see the fragments up close. A piece of a bound arm, a shard with half a hieroglyph on it, a sliver of clay from a pierced head. Each one is a tiny remnant of the powerful magic you just witnessed and performed. It feels like you are handling the debris from a great explosion, each piece humming with a faint, residual energy. You work with intense focus, your eyes scanning the stone block for any stray crumb of clay. Amenhotep watches you, his own sharp eyes double-checking your work. There's a debate among squad of the ritual. Was it the high-ranking nectar priest himself, or was it delegated to an assistant, an acolyte like you? The answer is likely both. In a high-stakes ritual for a major state enemy, the priest would likely oversee it with intense scrutiny. For more routine cursing an experienced assistant might be trusted to handle the cleanup. The fact that Amenhotep is watching you so closely tells you how important this particular ceremony is. You sweep the pile of shards to the edge of the block and carefully brush them onto your wooden dustpan. It's a surprisingly large pile of debris. So much destruction, contained in such a small volume. You hold the pan, feeling the weight of the shattered enemies. They are no longer figures or tablets. They are just pieces. An anonymous, broken collection of pottery. Their power has not vanished, but it has been transformed. It is the power of a king or a general, a contagion that must now be safely buried. Amenhotep nods, satisfied with your work. He has checked the block and the floor around it, ensuring not a single speck of the cursed clay remains. The chamber is clean again, sterile, ready for its next grim purpose. The first and most violent phase of the ritual is over. Now comes the final stage, the burial, the final containment of all this carefully manufactured, shattered evil. You hold the wooden dustpan, heavy with its load of sharp, grey fragments. The remains of the pharaoh's enemies reduced to a pile of what looks like broken pottery. The poison has been drawn, Amenhotep says, his voice low. Now it must be seeped back into the world. He turns and picks up one of the simple, unadorned clay pots you crafted what feels like a lifetime ago in the workshop upstairs. It is crude, lopsided, completely unremarkable. And that, you now understand, is the point. This is not a sacred canopic jar for the organs of a king, he explains. It is a vessel of containment, a prison. Its worthlessness is part of the magic. He holds the pot steady as you carefully, slowly, pour the contents of your dustpan into it. The shards rattle and clink as they fall, a dry, dead sound, like bones being tossed into a hole. You empty the pan completely, not a single speck of dust left behind. The pot is now half full of the shattered remains. Amenhotep takes the pot. He looks down into it, but the jumble of broken curses and names. He then takes the lid that you had also crafted, a simple, flat disk of clay, then places it on top, sealing the opening. But this is not a knot of fresh wet clay. This one, you sense, is pure Nile mud, not the contaminated mixture from before, and uses it to seal the crack between the lid and the rim of the pot. He smooths the clay with his thumb, creating a perfect, airtight seal. The shattered essence of the enemy is now trapped, imprisoned in a cheap, disposable clay container. It has become, in effect, a magical coffin. This use of a simple pot as a container is a consistent feature in the archaeology of Execration. These deposits are often found in what archaeologists call Execration pits, and the shattered figurines and tablets are almost always found inside one or more plain pottery vessels. It's a bit like a magical time capsule of hate. Sometimes multiple pots are nested inside each other, creating a series of concentric prisons for the cursed material. The great king of Kush, the powerful chieftain of the Levant, their essence is not worthy of a gilded sarcophagus, but is to be sealed in a pot worth less than a loaf of bread. There is a fascinating and somewhat unresolved debate about what, if anything, was buried along with the shards. Were other magical objects included in the pot? Some scholars theorize that things like animal bones, particularly from animals associated with chaos like the desert fox, or even symbolic weapons like miniature broken knives, might have been added to the mix to increase the curse's potency. But it opens up a whole world of possibilities about the complexity of these recipes for ruin. In this case, Amenhotep seems to favor a minimalist approach, just the pure, concentrated essence of the shattered enemy. He holds up the sealed pot. It feels heavier now, not just physically, but spiritually. It is a vessel of captured, neutralized evil. A bomb that has been diffused, but whose components are still dangerous. What was made in darkness must be buried in darkness, he says. He then looks at the remaining clay figures and tablets on the stone block. You had smashed them all. You were sure of it. But you realize now that he had you smash only one of each type of enemy, one chieftain, one traitor, one tablet of kings. The others remain intact. Not all sentences are carried out at once, Amenhotep explains. A warning, a threat held for a future time. He carefully gathers the remaining, intact figurines and tablets. These, he implies, are a magical arsenal, ready to be activated at a moment's notice should a new threat emerge from the same region, or a new official show signs of disloyalty. The ritual you performed tonight was not just an execution, it was also a restocking of the state's secret spiritual armory. He places the reserve curses into a separate, clean linen bag. He then hands you the sealed pot containing the shattered remains. It is cold to the touch. Your final task of the night is about to begin. You must take this vessel of concentrated failure and bury it where its power can be put to one final, protective use. You follow Amenhotep back up the narrow stone staircase, leaving the cold, sterile cube of a room behind. He slides the great stone door shut, and the grinding sound seems to seal away the echoes of the violence you committed there. As you ascend, the air grows warmer, losing its subterranean chill. It feels like you are returning to the world of the living, but you are carrying a piece of death in your hands. The sealed clay pot is heavy, a dense concentration of all the ill you helped to create. When you emerge back into the main temple complex, the moon is lower in the sky, casting long, distorted shadows. The night is closer to the dawn than to the dusk. Amenhotep leads you not towards the grand public entrances of the temple, but towards a more functional, more intimidating part of the sacred precinct, the fortress walls. The temple of Amun-Ra Karnak, where you are, is not just a religious center. It is a massive, fortified enclosure, a divine stronghold. Its towering mud brick walls and monumental gates are designed to protect the god's domain from the chaos of the outside world. You approach a lesser-used gate, a massive stone pylon that serves as an entry point for supply caravans. Two guards, silhouetted against the starry sky, stand motionless on the top of the gate. They do not challenge you. They have clearly been instructed to expect you. The threshold, Amenhotep says, his voice a low whisper. A gateway is a place of transition, a place of danger. It is where the outside world meets the inside world, where order meets chaos. It is the weakest point, and so we shall make it the strongest. He points to a spot on the ground, just beside the massive stone foundation of the gate tower. He gives you a small, simple tool, a hoe with a bronze blade. The ground is hard-packed earth and gravel. You begin to dig. The work is strenuous, your arms and back protesting. The rhythmic scrape and thud of the hoe is the only sound in the quiet of the pre-dawn. As you dig, you understand the final piece of the magical logic. You are about to bury this pot of concentrated failed enemies right at the threshold of the temple. The pot will become a kind of spiritual landmine. Any enemy, physical or magical, who tries to cross this threshold will have to pass over the buried essence of all the enemies who came before them and were defeated. The curse, even in its shattered and contained form, will now serve as a permanent ward, a magical barrier protecting the sacred space. This practice of burying execration deposits at thresholds is well attested in the archaeological record. They have been found near the gates of fortresses, at the entrances to tombs, and within the foundations of palaces and temples. It's a brilliant, for one piece of magic. First, you neutralize the current enemy. Second, you use their neutralized essence to build a magical wall against all future enemies. It's the ultimate form of recycling. There is a long-standing debate among Egyptologists about the precise intended function of these buried curses. Were they seen as an active defense, a sort of magical sentry that would actively repel intruders, or were they more of a passive deterrent, a symbolic declaration that all who oppose us will end up like this, shattered in a pot? Or perhaps they were meant to infect the ground itself, making it hostile territory for anyone with ill intent. The truth is likely a combination of all three. For the ancient Egyptians, the symbolic and the practical were often one and the same. You dig until the hole is about 2 feet deep. Your arms ache. You have gone from scribe to executioner to janitor to ditch digger, all in the space of a single night. Amenhotep takes the sealed clay pot from you. He says a short final prayer, a dedication of the pot and its contents to the protection of the temple. Then he gently places it at the bottom of the hole. It sits there, a humble, lumpy shape in the darkness. He gestures for you to fill the hole. You push the dirt and gravel back in, burying the pot. You cover the last traces of your work, tamping down the earth with your feet until the ground looks almost undisturbed. It is done. The remains of the pharaoh's enemies are now a part of his defenses. Their defeat has been turned into a cornerstone of Egypt's security. It is a cold, brutal, and ruthlessly efficient piece of statecraft. You stand there, breathing heavily in the cool morning air, looking at the spot where you just buried so much hatred. You wonder if the pot will remain there, undisturbed for 1,000 years, or 3,000. You stand over the freshly disturbed earth, your heart beating a slow, steady rhythm in the quiet of the coming dawn. The pot is buried. The curse is contained. The ritual is complete. A profound sense of exhaustion washes over you, so deep it feels like it's in your bones. You look at Amenhotep, expecting some final instruction, some word of dismissal. But the old priest is staring at the horizon, where a faint, pale line of grey is beginning to outline the distant hills. He is silent for a long time. Then he turns to you, and his face, in the soft, pre-dawn light, looks ancient and weary. The stern commander, the precise technician of magic, is gone. In his place is just an old man who has seen too much. You perform the rites correctly, he says, his voice losing its formal edge. But a question remains, doesn't it, scribe? The question that must never be asked aloud. He pauses, letting the weight of his words settle. The question hangs in the air between you, a shocking admission of doubt. After all the meticulous preparation, the terrifying invocations, the violent, systematic destruction, the head practitioner is voicing the ultimate uncertainty. Did the distant chieftain Teti wake up with a fever this morning? Will the corrupt officials' ledgers be discovered? Will the king of Kush's army suffer a sudden loss of morale? Or was this all just theater? A very elaborate, very secret, very grim piece of theater. The gods are not puppets, Amenhotep continues, more to himself than to you. We do not command them, we petition them. We petition them. We present our case as thoroughly and as persuasively as we can. We show them our will, our determination. We perform the necessary actions to prove our commitment. But the final verdict, that is in their hands. This is a theological point that historians and Egyptologists have argued about for more than a century. What was the perceived efficacy of these rituals? Did the priests who performed them believe they were a guaranteed, cause-and-effect form of magic, like a scientific experiment? Or did they see it as a form of intense, high-stakes prayer, a desperate appeal to the gods to intervene on their behalf? The answer is maddeningly unclear and likely changed over time and with different circumstances. Some texts read like technical manuals implying a scientific certainty. Others read like prayers, full of hope and supplication. It seems the Egyptians, pragmatic as always, held both ideas in their minds at once. The ritual was a powerful tool, but one whose success was ultimately dependent on divine will. Think of it this way, Amenhotep says, turning his gaze back to you. If a farmer plants a seed, he has done his part. He has done his part. He has chosen the right soil, he has watered it, but he does not command the sun to shine or the rains to fall. He has created the most favorable conditions for success, and then he must trust in the great order of the cosmos. He gestures back towards the buried pot. We have planted a seed of destruction, now we wait. This analogy brings a strange comfort. It frames the ritual not as an act of arrogant magical command, but as an act of faith, a very dark and violent faith, but faith nonetheless. You have done your part in the eternal struggle between order and chaos. You have filed your petition with the universe. Now the outcome is out of your hands. This perspective absolves you of the final responsibility. If the curse fails, it is not because you tied the knot incorrectly or smashed the figure with insufficient force. It is because the gods willed it so. Never speak of what you have seen tonight, Amenhotep says, his voice firm again, the commander returning. The power of this ritual lies in its secrecy. But do not forget it. Remember the weight of the stone in your hand. Remember the feel of the clay. This is the work that is done in the shadows so that others may live in the light. He gives you a final, long look, an unspoken acknowledgement of the terrible knowledge you now share. Then, he turns and walks away, his form slowly disappearing into the growing light of the temple complex, leaving you alone by the fortress gate, with the ghosts of the shattered enemies sleeping beneath your feet. You do not go back to your sleeping quarters. Sleep feels like a distant country you may never visit again. Instead, you walk, letting your feet carry you through the awakening temple. The first rays of the sun are now striking the tops of the highest pylons, turning the stone from grey to a warm, rosy pink. The world is being reborn, just as it is every day. Priests are beginning their morning hymns, their voices echoing from the sanctuary. The smell of baking bread for the gods' offerings is now strong on the air. Life is returning to its normal, comforting rhythm. Mot is being reasserted. But for you, something has irrevocably shifted. The world looks the same, but you are seeing it with new eyes. You look at the grand inscriptions on the temple walls, the heroic images of Pharaoh smiting his enemies, holding them by the hair, his mace raised high. Yesterday, you saw this as history, as a celebration of a past victory. Today, you see it as a public version of the secret act you just performed. You realize that the grand, triumphal art of the state and the dark, hidden rituals of the priests are two sides of the same coin. One is for public consumption, a message of strength and invincibility. The other is the hidden mechanism that is believed to make that strength a reality. This is the propaganda value of the ritual, even a secret one. It has a profound effect on those who know about it. Imagine you are a general, about to lead a campaign against the very Nubian warlord whose effigy you just saw pierced and smashed. Wouldn't you march with a greater sense of confidence? Wouldn't you believe that your enemy is already weakened, cursed, and spiritually defeated? The ritual functions as a massive morale booster for the inner circle of the Egyptian state. It creates a powerful sense of magical superiority, a belief that your side has an ultimate weapon the enemy cannot counter. Historians have long recognized this dual function of Egyptian statecraft. There was the hard power of armies and chariots, and the soft power of diplomacy and trade. But there was also this third, stranger category, divine power, the belief that through ritual and right action, you could align the gods with your cause and magically ensure victory. Execration was a tool of hard power, intended to physically destroy an enemy, but it was also a tool of soft power, a way of building confidence and projecting an aura of invincibility. You watch as a group of soldiers marches past, their sandals slapping on the stone in perfect unison. They are young, confident, their bronze-tipped spears gleaming in the new sunlight. They do not know that a battle on their behalf has already been fought and won in a dark room deep beneath their feet. Their confidence is, in part, a product of the secret work you have done. You have helped to weave the cloak of invincibility that they all wear. You think about the other side of this. What if the chieftain Theban, in his distant desert camp, heard a rumor that his name had been written on a clay tablet in Theban, was being cursed by the nectar priests of Amun-Ra? The psychological effect would be devastating. It would be a form of terrorism, an attack meant to create fear and paranoia. There's a subtle and ongoing debate among scholars about whether the Egyptians ever deliberately leaked the news of these rituals. Did they ever let a captured spy escape with the terrifying story of what he had witnessed? It would be a brilliant, if cruel, psychological tactic. There's no direct evidence for it, but it's entirely consistent with the ruthless pragmatism of the Egyptian state. You find a quiet corner in a sun-drenched courtyard and sit, your back against a warm stone wall. The sun feels good on your skin. It feels clean, pure, burning away the lingering chill of the underground chamber. You close your eyes. You are just a junior scribe, a tiny cog in a vast machine. But last night, you were taken into the engine room. You were shown how the real power that drives the empire is generated. It is not just forged in the fire of the blacksmith or the will of the pharaoh. It is forged in darkness, with clay and spit and whispers and blood reading. The knowledge is a heavy burden. You feel older. You feel implicated. The peace of the morning is beautiful, but you know now what dark and terrible work is required to maintain it. Years pass. The memory of that night never fades, but it settles, like a stone at the bottom of a deep pool. It is always there, a dark shape in the quiet depths of your mind, but the waters of your daily life are clear and calm above it. You are no more a junior scribe. You have risen through the ranks of the temple administration. Your hand is still steady, your knowledge of the forms still good. You are respected. You are respected. You are respected. You are respected. You are a family, a small house, a measure of comfort has remained in balance. The whispers of enemies at the borders never truly cease. They are a permanent feature of the political landscape, like the wind in the desert. But there have been no great crises, no catastrophic invasions. The armies of Pharaoh have been victorious. Rebellious governors have been brought to heel, their ambitions mysteriously collapsing. Plagues that ravaged neighboring lands have seemed to pass Egypt by. To the public, these are signs of the Pharaoh's strength and the favor of the gods. They are ambiguous signs. You see a military victory, and you wonder if it was the skill of the general or the power of a shattered pot buried by a fortress gate. An official is exposed for corruption, and you wonder if it was the work of a diligent auditor or a curse of confusion spoken in a hidden chamber. You can never know. You live in a world of two realities, the visible and the invisible, and you can never be sure which one is truly pulling the strings. Then, one day, a new project begins. A great extension is being built onto the temple, a new pylon gate, grander than any that came before it. The work requires deep new foundations, and the chosen site is near that lesser-used supply gate you visited so long ago. You are now a senior administrator, and you oversee the logistics of the construction. You watch as hundreds of workmen, their bodies brown and sick with sweat, begin the massive task of digging the foundation trenches. You know what is coming. You stand by the edge of the excavation, your heart beating a little faster. You watch as the workmen dig deeper and deeper, their shovels biting into the earth. And then a cry from one of the foremen. He brings it to you, holding it carefully in his rough hands. It is a simple, sealed clay pot, caked in the dirt of decades. It is your pot, the one you helped to bury on that moonless night. The foreman looks at you, his face a mixture of curiosity and fear. A magician's pot, he mutters, bad luck to disturb such things. This is how these artifacts were found, not through grand discovery, but by accident. A farmer plowing a field, the builder digging a foundation, or robber clearing a tomb. For thousands of years, these buried pots of hatred lay sleeping, until chance or necessity brings them back into the light. The workmen who find them often react with the same superstitious fear as this foreman. They recognize them for what they are, objects of dangerous power, best left alone. Archaeology as a formal science has only existed for a tiny fraction of the time since these pots were buried. For millennia, they were just strange, disturbing objects occasionally unearthed by the local population. It's a point of debate what happened to them. Were they reburied, smashed out of fear? Or were they sometimes kept, their perceived magical power repurposed by local wise women or village sorcerers? It's a history of reception that is almost entirely lost to us. You take the pot from the foreman. It is cool and heavy in your hands. The seal Amenhotep made is still intact. You look at the foreman and the other workmen, who are watching you with wide, expectant eyes. They expect you, a high-ranking temple official, to know what to do. You must project an aura of calm, of control. It is an old offering, you say, your voice steady. No matter. I will see it is properly consecrated. You dismiss them, telling them to continue their work a few feet away. You hold the pot. It is a direct link to your past, to the secret knowledge that has shaped your entire life. You think of an Amenhotep long dead. You think of the violent, methodical ritual. You think of the names, the faces you never saw, now just dust inside this clay shell. For a moment, you are tempted. You could take it to a hidden place. You could break the seal. You could look inside, but you know you will not. Some doors are not meant to be reopened. You carry the pot away from the construction site, a silent, heavy ghost from a past that no one else remembers. You carry the pot to a secluded part of the temple, a quiet, forgotten garden where old, discarded statues are laid to rest among overgrown papyrus clumps. Here, in the warm afternoon sun, you find a small, unused storeroom, little more than a stone shed. You place the pot on a dusty shelf. It seems wrong to just leave it there, but you don't know what else to do. Burying it feels like perpetuating a cycle you want no part of. Smashing it feels dangerous. Days turn into weeks. The construction on the new pylon continues, but the discovery of the pot has unsettled you. It has brought the past rushing back. You find yourself thinking about the nature of the ritual itself. Was it always the same? Did it change? You are a senior official now. You have access to the House of Life, the great library and scriptorium of the temple. You have the authority to consult texts that were once far beyond your station. One evening, driven by a need you don't fully understand, you go to the library. You request access to the older archives, the ones kept in the most secure, restricted sections. You are looking for the books Amenhotep must have studied, the procedural manuals for state-sectioned magic. After much searching, a senior librarian, a man even older than Amenhotep was, brings you a single, heavy papyrus scroll. It is ancient, the papyrus brittle and dark with age. Its title is the Book of Overturning Apep. Apep, the great serpent of chaos, the ultimate enemy of the sun god Ra. As you unroll it, you see that it contains a series of rituals, hymns, and curses all designed to defeat him. And within its columns of text, you recognize the grammar of doom that Amenhotep taught you, legalistic language of destruction. But it's not being used against human enemies. It's being used against a cosmic one. And then you understand, the ritual you performed was not invented to curse the king of Kush. It was a scaled-down, personalized version of a much older, more profound cosmological rite. The priests had taken the celestial battle between Ra and Apep, between order and chaos, and they had adapted it for terrestrial, political purposes. They took a weapon designed to fight a god and aimed it at a man. This realization is a profound one. It suggests that over time, the magic became more mundane. What started as a desperate, daily ritual to ensure the sun would rise again became a practical to love for policy. The grand, cosmic struggle was repurposed into a convenient method for dealing with the troublesome governor. This is a pattern that historians of religion often see. Over long periods, grand cosmological beliefs can slowly be adapted and scaled down for more personal or political uses. The great powers of the universe are brought down to earth and put to work. There is an ongoing scholarly discussion about when and why this shift happened with execration rituals. Did it happen during a time of great national weakness, when the state felt it needed to use every weapon at its disposal? Or did it happen during a time of strength, an arrogant expression of the belief that the pharaoh's enemies were no different from the enemies of the gods? The timeline is murky, but the trend is clear. The magic was fading from the cosmic to the political. As you continue your research over the following months, you see the final stages of this decline. You find later texts from periods when Egypt's power was truly waning, its armies defeated, its borders porous. In these later texts, the execration rituals become more common, more desperate, and less formal. The lists of enemies grow longer and more fanciful, including kings who had been dead for centuries. The magic was becoming a substitute for real power, not a supplement to it. It was a hollow echo of a once mighty tradition. The smashing of a pot was no longer the prelude to a victorious campaign, it was a gesture of frustrated impotence. The ritual was fading, a dying ember of a once great fire. You leave the library, the dust of ancient texts on your hands. You have seen the entire life cycle of a belief. You saw its terrifying, potent heart that night with Imhotep. And now, in the scrolls, it was not a single static thing. It was a living idea that grew, adapted, and eventually withered away, becoming just another story, another layer of dust in the long history of your people. You walk back to your small, quiet house, the setting sun casting a long shadow behind you, and you feel a sense of peace. You have finally understood. And now the story is done. The last word has been written on the old papiers. You can feel the tale beginning to dissolve, like those shattered clay figures turning to dust. The sharp edges of the story are softening, the voice of the priest is fading, the cold of the stone chamber is warming into the comfort of your own bed. You can feel a gentle, quiet space opening up around you. There is nothing more to learn, nothing more to learn, nothing more to learn. You can let it all go. The whispers of enemies, the secret chants, the heavy stone. Let them all drift away like sand on a soft breeze. They are just echoes now. And even echoes must eventually fall silent. The world of ancient Egypt, with its bright sun and its dark secrets, can recede, becoming a distant landscape in a dream you are already beginning to forget. All that matters now is this quiet, this stillness, this gentle descent into the deep, peaceful lands of your own well-earned rest. And now so can you. The path of our story concludes here. If you need to walk a little further tonight, you know where to find other gentle trails. Rest well. Good night.